"Water spirits, I call on you," she cried. "Take pity on me and have my miserable life. I have no child and my life has been nothing but a pain." The water stilled and the air grew cold. At first everything seemed unchanged, but Enkay began to hear a spiritual song from the waters. The song was so enchanting and sounded like it was itself flowing. A figure emerged from the river, a mermaid with shimmering skin and hair that flowed like the river itself. "You should seek a child, and not to end your life," the spirit said, her voice calm and otherworldly. Enkay was at first numb, and all she could do was to stare before saying, "Yes, great spirit," Enkay replied, bowing her head. "Your pain has reached us. We will grant your wish." The figure, once a woman, transformed into a heavily built man. He began to run his firm hands around the dainty curves of her body. She shook like she'd caught cold under his hands. The neck of her orange wear slunk down low enough to offer a better view of her as he tugged at it. He undid the knot of the wrapper, leaving only the inner garment. Do you know that most people come from different worlds before they are born here on Earth? But they do not know because no memory of their past lives come with them to the present. There was one of such persons, a girl from the sea, who joined some journeying spirits and crossed into the earth to be born a normal human being. What was her name and how did her life pan out? I will let you know at the end of my tale. In the small Igbo village of Umogbele, life revolved around the cycles of the seasons, the beat of the talking drum, and the laughter of children playing under the mango trees. The people of Umogbele reveled in nature's abundance and were happy but for Enkay. The shouts of the women to their children, the laughter of children as they played, and life itself was a painful reminder of what she could never get, or rather, what she was. Enkay was a barren woman. She had been married to Majuka for 7 years, yet her womb had not borne fruit and her paps never gave suck. At first, the village women whispered behind her back about her childlessness, but with time the whispers turned into open ridicule. Children mimicked her behind her back, chanting, "Enkay the empty part." They formed songs that mocked her condition. Enkay took everything in her stride, still believing that the high gods would smile at her someday. Even the elders avoided her during fertility dances at the annual Yam festival. Who would invite a barren woman for a fertility ritual to the earth goddess? No one. The ache in her chest deepened with each market day where women bragged about their children's achievements. But her greatest worries came from within her home. Her greatest source of hurt was her mother-in-law. Majuka's mother, her name was Anulika. Majuka's mother had always opposed her son's marriage to Enkay, claiming she lacked the waist of a good wife, and after 7 childless years, Mama's suspicion appeared to be true, and her disapproval became outright hostility. Her sharp tongue was like a whip, each word designed to wound. Majuka had had his fill, so he finally spoke, his voice loud and firm. "Mama, Enkay is my wife. If the gods choose to bless us, they will." Mama scoffed. "The gods help those who help themselves. You sit and wait while your lineage withers like a cassava plant without rain." "Majuka, can't you see this woman is out to end your lineage?" Mama said at the top of her voice. "Your mates are fathers, but you sit here feeding a woman who eats and gives you nothing in return. You need a new wife." "I made a vow before God to stand by my wife. I love her." "Love? Vow?" Mama spat. "Abomination. So she has not only decided to end my lineage, but she has fed you with love medicine, right?" Before Majuka could say more, Mama asked sarcastically, "Will your vow give me grandchildren? Mark my words, Majuka. If you don't act, I will find you a proper wife myself." She said this and walked away. Enkay's worst day of her life arrived one morning with ample hurt. A full market day, Enkay had gone to buy ingredients for soup. As she handed over her cowries to the seller, her mother-in-law appeared just beside her. "Here she is," her mother-in-law shouted, pointing at Enkay. "The man in a woman's wrapper." Enkay froze, her heart pounding. "Tell me, Enkay," Mama continued, her voice loud enough to draw a crowd. How does it feel to live in my son's house and eat his food without giving him even a lizard to call his own?" Necker was bedazzled and could only look on in utter surprise and shame. The women in the market snickered, some pretending to cough to hide their laughter. Tears welled up in Necker's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She dropped her basket and fled, leaving the items and payment behind. Unable to bear it, tears streamed down her face, and the question lingered in her mind. "Gods of our land, when will I ever be blessed with a child?" Necker returned home, but even Maduka could say or do nothing about the situation, and didn't care much to console her. He too needed a child, and he had toyed with the thoughts his mother repeatedly seeded him with. True to her word, Maduka's mother brought a new wife for him, a pretty 22-year-old who Mama Maduka claimed had fresh blood and would conceive. Her name was Amaka. Amaka was from a neighboring village, and she was everything Mama wanted. Young, fertile, and eager to please her mother-in-law. Amaka was everything Necker was not. Her presence brewed a storm from the moment she stepped into the compound. Annika treated Necker with thinly veiled contempt. She walked with a swagger, her laughter echoing in the compound caustically. It was obvious she was mocking Necker. As Mama walked past with Amaka, she paused briefly and said to Necker, who was appalled by everything she saw, "Necker, you should thank the gods you're still allowed to stay in this compound." Mama sneered, "But don't get too comfortable. Your replacement is here." With the arrival of Amaka, Necker started going to the market for herself because using the main food supplies would cause Mama to badmouth her. She began cooking with separate pots and even became more of a maid because Amaka did practically nothing and Maduka was a sheep once his mother was involved. Maduka at first avoided Amaka like a plague because he didn't want to hurt Necker. It was on one of such moments when she came back from the market to discover that her things were moved to Amaka's hut and Amaka's things were moved to the main wife's hut. With anger, she dashed about looking for Amaka to shout out her brains, but Amaka seemed not to be at the backyard, the kitchen, or anywhere. After searching in futility, she went to report the behavior to Maduka, but as she approached the door, she began hearing heavy moans of, "Oh, strong man, oh, sir. Abonnier, their strong man." The moans were accompanied by a supporting chorus from a man. The man was groaning, obviously enjoying as he exerted himself. Her heart clenched, and her vision became cloudy with tears. With all her courage, she barged in to confirm her fears. Maduka was sweatily working on Amaka, the whole room filled with their mingled scents. Amaka's legs were splayed wide. So engrossed was Maduka as he worked that with strength and rapidity on Amaka that they didn't realize for a while that Necker was there. Maduka shamelessly pulled away from Amaka. He was sweating profusely. Amaka did not look disturbed. She even tried to pull him back. "I can explain," he said to Necker. "You disgust me," she said, then walked over to Amaka. "What are you doing in my bed?" The voice wasn't as anger-filled as it was pained. Amaka scoffed, looked her in the eye and said, "What do you think? I'm taking care of my husband." "Husband? When did he become your husband?" I want a son." And you are..." "No, finish it. I am Barren. Finish it, Maduka." Amaka burst into derisive laughter. The words stung because he was indirectly saying Amaka was capable of what she was not. Necker fled to her new hut, and Maduka stood there watching with Amaka egging him to come and finish what they were doing. 3 months later, Amaka announced her pregnancy. The news spread like wildfire, and the village celebrated. For Necker, each congratulatory cheer was a knife to her soul. Amaka wasted no time asserting her dominance. She deliberately walked in front of Necker with her protruding belly when she conceived. She called Necker witch in hushed tones, spreading rumors that Necker had used her witchcraft to eat her own children. One evening, Amaka tripped over a stool in the kitchen. Though she was unharmed, Mama seized the opportunity to accuse Necker of witchcraft. "You pushed her," Mama shouted, gathering neighbors into the compound. I did no such thing, Necker cried. Liar, Mama retorted. You think we don't know. You are a child-eater. That's why you have no children of your own. The crowd murmured. Maduka stood silently in the corner, his head bowed. He said nothing in defense of Necker. It was that night, under the weight of shame, that Necker ran to the stream in tears. The river was sacred, a place where the physical world met the spiritual. Necker walked barefoot through the dark forest, guided only by the light of the moon and the croak of frogs. When she reached the riverbank, she fell to her knees. Water spirits, I call on you, she cried. Take pity on me and have my miserable life. I have no child and my life has been nothing but a pain. The water stilled and the air grew cold. At first everything seemed unchanged, but Necker began to hear a spiritual song from the waters. The song was so enchanting and sounded like it was itself flowing. A figure emerged from the river, a mermaid with shimmering skin and hair that flowed like the river itself. You should seek a child, and not to end your life, the spirit said, her voice calm and otherworldly. Necker was at first numb, and all she could do was to stare before saying, Yes, great spirit, Necker replied, bowing her head. Your pain has reached us. We will grant your wish. The figure, once a woman, transformed into a heavily built man. He began to run his firm hands around the dainty curves of her body. She shook like she'd caught cold under his hands. The neck of her orange wear slunk down low enough to offer a better view of her as he tugged at it. He undid the knot of the wrapper, leaving only the inner garment. His eyes stared downwards a little so he could make out the outline and picture the swell, arcs, curves and features of Necker's body. He was just a breath away from Necker. I have been watching you, he said into her ears, as he pulled Necker's hair back from her face. His warm breath touched her neck. Necker didn't know when a moan escaped her. His fingers went below her belt and parted something lush and warm. Necker squealed a bit. For a moment she got mesmerized and didn't realize that he had dropped her gently beside the stream. It was only when she touched the wet grass that she did realize. He pulled off all hindrances, and the length of his manhood was enough to make her mouth gape with surprise. He tried to help her take off any barrier so that she could welcome him unhindered into the warmth her husband Maduka had forfeited. Her logical senses screamed for her to leave him, but the tickle she felt from him, and the familiarity of the way he handled her all round, it was as though she knew him. There under the brightly lit moon, their bodies mangled, and of course, primal dance followed. He collapsed beside Gunima after what felt like ages of excitement for both of them, but he did not look exhausted. He shifted her full hair, and their eyes locked as he said, You will conceive, my dear, but our child will be a water child. She should never come near the fire. Necker nodded, and soon felt a heavy weight in her eyes. She closed them, and drifted up into the oblivion of sleep. She was happy, dreamily clutching her male hero. Rays of dawn flooded the small hut. Necker, who usually awoke before the cock crows, now had slept past it to the time when the sun rose in its strength. He woke up touching and feeling for her male hero, but no one seemed around. She opened her eyes, not realizing where she was at first, as the memories of the night swelled her logic. It came to her that she was in her hut in Maduka's house, but she was confused. She had slept at the stream. She had been taken by a man she felt familiar too. When she made to get up, she felt a sourness and thick stickiness at her groin. It was the evidence of the previous night. Someone had actually had her, and yet brought her back to her hut. The words of the night and the songs of the sea recurred to her. You will conceive, my dear, but our child will be a water child. She should never come near the fire. As the months passed, strange things began to happen. On moonlit nights, Necker would hear faint whispers outside her window, like the murmurs of the river. Once, she dreamt of the strange man she had slept with by the riverside, his eyes blazing with both love and anger. You are mine, he said, and so is our child. Do not forget that, Necker. She awoke, panting and shocked. The dream felt so real. She had slept with the man in a moment of pleasure, but little did she know that the strange man was no ordinary man at all. The man was the Sea King himself,